All right, all right. Welcome everybody to episode 78 of the Hideout, where we will be having another panel featuring the best and brightest of the Web3 gaming and Metaverse space. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Nick Frontera. I am one of the founders and the CEO of Apollo Entertainment, the company behind Satoshiverse and the Legion's 2029 game. I'm really excited for another panel today. I'm a little under the weather today, so I might be a little less talkative than usual, but we'll power through. Just had my coffee, so I should be having some fake energy for a little while, so we'll see. For those of you who don't know about Satoshiverse and Legions and what we've been building, we'll keep it real short. What we're going to do is we're going to do some quick introductions for all the projects. But on our end, Legions 2029 is the game we've been building for the last 2.5 years. It is a high fidelity hack and slash RPG hybrid. Basically, we took inspiration from games like God of War and Diablo, combined them together into a very fast-paced PC game. It's totally free to play, and we've got a ton of stuff going on. I don't want to spoil the surprise. I won't go too deep into it, but since it's free to play, the best thing you can do is just go on and download it. It takes a little bit of time. You just download the game and you're in. All the information and a trailer so you can see the gameplay is in the pinned tweet at the top of the spaces. Before we jump into introductions for all the projects, we're going to take care of a few housekeeping items. The first one is super important. We just started this Hideout account. Although we've been doing the Hideout now for over 1.5 years every week, we did want to have an account dedicated to it so we could do some additional content throughout the week and really, dive deeper into some of the stuff we talked about. So a couple things. First, please give the Hideout account a follow. It's great so that we can get more engagement to these spaces. We pinned a tweet at the top of the spaces that is announcing the space. Please do go give that a like and a retweet so that everybody knows the space is live. That is also how you're going to be able to enter into our giveaway at the end of the space. So at the end of the space, we will see who's still here, and we will select a winner from those who reposted that tweet at the top, and those people will win some Satoshi's crystals, which are the important key resource in our Legions 2029 game. So definitely want to get your hands on some of those. I don't have to tell some of the people in the space who have been part of the community for a long time, but for those of you who don't know, definitely worth something to go and do that and try to win some crystals. All right, so I am going to, I guess the other housekeeping item is that we are definitely big fans of telling the community about what you guys are building. So if you have videos or other illustratives in the form of a tweet, please feel free, speakers, to pin those to the top of the page. We find that is typically better than, the 1,000 words that could be the alternative. So with that, let's do some awesome introductions for our speakers. I'm trying to get one last speaker on stage, and then we can get started. Looks like we got everybody. All right, so why don't we start with a familiar face. Carl, do we have you over there on the 24/7 Comics account? Hopefully you're hearing me. Can
Yeah,
I get,
sounds like Carl's having some trouble getting up on stage right now.
all
So yeah,
right,
I'm just working that out with him right now.
no worries. We'll come back to Carl. Let's go over to Magicraft. Nice to have you here.
Hey guys, glad to be here as well. Thanks for inviting us.
Cool. Could you give us a quick introduction on what you guys are building? And again, feel free to pin anything to the top of the spaces that's illustrated.
Got it. So my name is Alex. I'm the social media coordinator for Magicraft behind this logo. Speaking with you guys all today. What is Magicraft? Magicraft is a Web3 MOBA game. We're already fully live and available on all platforms, being iOS, Android, and even Steam. Recently, we've announced that we are shifting into a more broad and um, more essentially bigger ecosystem, MCRT ecosystem, and we're building multiple games. So we've since then released 2 more new games, and essentially just last week we've released our third game, Magic 8 Ball, and before that we had Magic Runner. So I guess I'll attach it since you allowed us to do it. Yeah, it is the latest addition to the MCRT ecosystem. What's cool about our games? They're all free to play and all play to earn, so they're all united by our native token MCRT. So yeah, players are all able to come join, check them out, and have fun playing. Each player will find their own game. Thanks for inviting us.
Amazing. Well, definitely excited to have you guys here and dive in on some of the questions that we've got coming up. Let's go over to OP Games. Can you tell us about what you guys are building?
Yes, hi. Good morning or good evening, wherever you guys are. This is Chase. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OP Games. Essentially, OP Games is a Web3 indie game developer ecosystem. We're working on a couple of things. Generally, number one would be Arcadia, which is our Web3 indie game development platform. Right now, we do have about 63 games in the platform, mostly by our indie game developer partners. This is also where players can discover games that they can play and they can support as well. Most recently, we've launched a new product called Spark, which is a full stack AI slash on-chain game framework that could work pretty well with web-based games in general that goes into Arcadia, the platform. And then just last week, we launched OP Guild, our collective of about 3,800 game developers, moving from Web 2 to Web 3. So that's kind of keeping us a little busy these days, but thank you for having us here. We appreciate that a lot.
I love it. And, one thing that we talk a lot about is how to actually make that transition from Web 2 to Web 3 happen, right? For game developers and just games in general. So knowing that you guys are building awesome resources and an ecosystem for those developers is a really great thing. And I can't wait to dive in on some of those points as well. I know we're going to get into it a little bit later. All right, so Carl, how's the mic working? Or do we have you?
You have me. I am here. Nick, it's always good to hear your voice. Thanks for having me. This is Carl Choi from 24/7 Comics. I am the publisher of this IP company that straddles between Web 2 and Web 3, and just super excited to be here. We're spending a lot of time with different gaming companies, product companies, and ultimately just leveraging our IP on these different licensing collaborations. So excited to be here and hang out with y'all.
Amazing. Well, good to have you back on as well. Always a fun time. Let's go to Spencer, who will be taking us away on our journey for the rest of the spaces.
What's going on, guys? My name is Spencer Vogel. I am the business development manager for Satoshiverse and Apollo Entertainment. I'm going to be hosting the space today and asking the questions and just making sure the conversation moves forward. What up, Carl? And then Chase, good to hear your voice again. And then Magic Craft, nice to meet you, Alex. So basically getting into the format for today, we're going to start out with a group question for everyone. We'll call on someone to start, and then feel free to just jump into the discussion from there. Then we'll move into some individual questions for each of you guys, and then move back into group questions at the end if we have time. And then just reiterating what Nick said in the beginning, especially for people who are joining us a little bit new and didn't hear it, we are doing a giveaway on this space, as we always do. In order to win our giveaway, all you need to do is retweet the post that we have pinned to the top. It's the middle post pinned to the top of the spaces that says "We're live." Give that a retweet and then stick around until the end of the space, and that is how you enter. And we're going to be giving away some of our Satoshi's crystals, which is our main in-game resource that's used to upgrade your items and your character and basically everything that you need for the game right now. So really exciting giveaway. So make sure that you give that a retweet. And then also make sure you give this account that I'm speaking on right now, the Hideout, a follow as we're trying to grow this account. Would really appreciate that. So moving on to our first question here, and maybe Chase, you could start us off for this one. So what impact do you think AI will have on the Web3 gaming space or on the metaverse?
That's I guess a loaded question, quite honestly, because it's already impacting a lot of processes that kind of like works in just even Web2 gaming in general. But if you're just asking about like how much of an impact it will have on Web3 gaming and the metaverse in general, it's going to be a lot. It's a huge impact, quite honestly, and that's one of the reasons why we're also building something that's AI and on-chain related, because of the fact that there are a lot of stuff that we can work on with AI that wasn't just possible before, during the time that centralized databases and just generally people making games aren't able to accomplish. So to downplay AI as something that's going to be destructive for the industry, I think a lot of people tend to kind of like overlook the fact that the evolution of games will really change how we see things into perspective. Like if you think of like games as something that you play, you're probably stuck in like the 90s or like the 2000s, right? Like in terms of like early 2000s era, in terms of like how we interact with games in general. In the past, you play the game, but at some point in the future, the game could probably play you. There's many innovations that could come out of having AI and on-chain solutions as well, mixed together to create a whole lot of impact for that.
Magicraft or 24/7 or Nick, anything you have to add there?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So you're right that this is a kind of a huge question, right? Because AI is hitting so many different aspects of the gaming and metaverse space already, and I guess I'll kind of talk to the things that I'm maybe most excited about right now, with AI and some of the things that we're looking at. Obviously, the ability to shorten production flows and go to market times and create some really interesting and engaging experiences with smaller teams, I think is going to be a byproduct of AI. I think teams that may have wanted to create a really, really cool experience, a unique idea and experiment a bit more will have the means to do so, because the go-to-market times and the resources needed to produce that experience will eventually be significantly less than they are now. So I think what we're going to see is indie game developers in particular creating much more experimental experiences, and pushing them to market and kind of letting communities and users decide, hey, is this something that's interesting? And if so, then we can kind of elaborate on it. And if not, then, at least the risk of failure is much lower when you can go to market using some of these shortened production pipelines. So I think on the production side, I agree. I do think that it's going to change the way that game studios operate. I think there's this huge fear that AI is going to replace everybody. And I think that to some extent that's well founded. I think that you look at some of the layoffs that major production studios and AAA studios have been doing in recent times. And I think that, there's a real fear that could just permeate through the industry. But I think what people don't take into account is kind of just how adjustments to technology typically work, right? Typically, you have a paradigm shifting technology, which creates new problems and new opportunities. And I don't think AI is going to be any different. I think that what's going to be important, and I think maybe the biggest challenge of being, a junior game developer or mid-level game developer in the industry is understanding where humans add value, right? And, the redundancies that AI will eliminate, but also the doors and problems and opportunities that it will create. And so I think if you're looking at AI, it's one of those things that, maybe there's reasons to be scared in the broader sense. We don't want a Terminator type situation happening. But when we're talking about game development, I think the key is to really learn how to use it, right? To learn where it can shorten those production flows and allow smaller studios to create really engaging experiences. I personally am excited. I think, especially now that, we've seen in the crypto space this desire to form niche communities around IPs, right? And we see, groups of thousands, right? Which is a very small community for a normal IP, but groups of thousands allow a project and an idea to flourish through crowdfunding and all the things that we've embraced in the Web3 space. And I think that, you look at what a community that raised, I don't know, $500,000 on an NFT collection and wants to build something awesome can do with that $500,000, 3 years ago versus 3 years from now. And I think it's going to be a very different, question and equation, and they're going to be able to take that idea a lot further with lower resources. So I do think AI is going to democratize creativity quite a bit. I think people who may lack certain technical skills are going to be able to still express themselves creatively using AI. I also think that, on the other side, not on the production side, but on the immersion side, I'm really excited about some of the work that's being done with, AI for NPCs and integrating large language models. As someone who likes games like Grand Theft Auto or some of these more open world games, I think something that was said earlier is very true, that, if your construct is I'm playing the game, and playing the game traditionally has meant playing through a script or a series of possibilities, I think that what's going to make games more immersive and really that you're experiencing the game and that you're part of the game, and where I see kind of the blend between entertainment and gaming happening in the future, is that game developers won't build games and scripts, they'll build worlds and characters and backgrounds, right? And then a lot of what you're going to experience in those games is going to depend largely on how you play the game and how the game adapts to you. And I really think that's not only the future of gaming, but the future of entertainment. I think we're going to see movies become more experiential. I think as VR and AR technology and the hardware gets better, we're going to just see, a different level of immersion driven by AI. And I think AI is kind of what weaves all that together in terms of, making characters feel more believable, giving them a wider range of outcomes that could happen, and allowing the game to adapt on the back end to the choices you make. And we've seen an appetite for that, over the last 5 to 10 years with some experiments that have been done both in the gaming space and in the entertainment space. And I think we're only going to see more of that and more immersive experiences, as we move forward.
Carl, I'd be interested to hear your perspective from like the comic publishing side and how you think AI will impact it. And I guess are you scared about if that's going to hurt kind of like the integrity of like the traditional comic artist and kind of what are you thinking about all this?
Yeah, no, it's a prominent topic within the comic book community, and I may be one of the unpopular opinions when I say that AI will change comic and the creative process in a positive way, because yeah, you're right. There's a ton of fear in the space. A lot of talent are actually switching off of Instagram and moving over to Kara because they were kind of opposing or kind of revolting against this whole idea of AI integration through Instagram. And so maybe that might help Kara to become that platform, but who knows? But the reason I am optimistic about it all is because I think, like any tools, eventually it'll kind of become part of the process. And, to me, every step forward will help us create more efficiently. And I think one of the reasons why comic book as an industry has not been able to gain popularity is not because it's not a powerful platform. Look, comics have been around since the beginning of mankind. Like you could look through, millions of years in the past, and there's cave paintings that are comic books, right? It survived, our so many lifetimes already. So comics aren't going away. What is going away is the traditional industry of physical publishing, as well as local comic book shops are definitely falling off. A lot of it has to do with the people in charge are just, not willing to adapt, because if you think about the 90s, comics were like, in essence, the NFTs of its time. Like there was a moment where people speculated on, and comics sold millions and millions of copies. X-Men #1 sold 8.2 million copies, and even today is a $50 to $100 book if you grade it, right? And so it's worth something, and there's a lot of materials out there, but the problem was people started moving away from it all, because there just wasn't a sense of transparency in the way the industry is being managed. And so hopefully, I think how I see comic books being able to catch up and being able to engage the current market is if it also increases its ability to produce content in a faster rate. And I believe AI will do that. Now, AI in the forefront, I don't think it's very favored right now, because it's competing with the creative space. But I do feel like once it, people kind of get over it and start adapting it as a tool, it would basically help with the commercial space and scaling the ability for artists and talent to create content as fast as people are willing to consume it, which I think it's heavily lacking. And then the last piece about why I think it's important that creators use it and leverage it as a tool is because to me, it's to not use AI is basically to say we're going to go back, using a chisel on a stone tablet, because we're just going to fall behind. And so any creators who continue fighting against AI and using it to scale themselves and to provide faster output for their craft, I think it's really going to fall behind in a big way. So yeah, those are my thoughts, and I do feel like AI is also going to help, not just with scalability, but also connectivity, because, just imagine the possibilities when IP is being leveraged in so many different places, and AI can actually, be used as part of the back end to help place those IPs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, you know, even for the comic industry, which is something that even the traditional space, I grew up reading comic books. I think a lot of us did. I as a kid wish I had some, image generation stuff to make up for the fact that I couldn't draw worth anything. And, I saw my grandpa doing some awesome stuff, but I could never do that. But I had a lot of really cool ideas for comic books, and I wrote some scripts and, put those together. And, it would have been really cool to throw that into some prompt generation and be able to create a really cool full comic book with a character that I imagined, even if it was just for me, to express myself and to create things that I enjoyed, right? And I think for me, as much as AI has been a resource for some of the things we do, it's also been a playground personally, allowing me to kind of delve deeper into my own creativity. And that could be through comics, it could be through movies, it could be through animation. But, I think there's this perception that art needs to be for someone else, right? It needs to be for sale or for a living, or and really I would say I'd be willing to say the vast majority of artists who create art do so for personal reasons. It's only the small few who create art to make that their livelihood. And I think that's a bit of a very fortunate place for those artists who work their whole lives and are able to survive off of their art and thrive really. And I think, but for the vast majority of, let's say, art that's created, it's being created by people who simply want to express themselves and document things. And I don't see any reason why AI can't be a tool for doing that. And frankly, um, creating something beautiful can kind of happen in so many different ways, right? And so if I, want to dabble in, I own some land in Decentraland and I want to create a really cool structure using AI, I can't do that as a, 3D modeler. I don't know how to do that stuff. But, using AI, I might be able to do that. And maybe it's just my parcel that I want to have my friends over at. But, I can go there just like I could probably go to Sketchpad and get someone else's art. But it's not mine at that point, right? So, you start to think about expression in general. And I only think that AI is going to enhance expression. I think that's the key, right? Is we can be scared of what it's going to do to the industry and the changes that are going to happen, but there's really not a lot of purpose in that. I think we need to be focusing on, frankly, if we want to knock AI, let's focus on bad actors and, some of the scary stuff that people can do with AI. I think when we're talking about how our AI is going to make the world more beautiful and with art and with expression, I think there's so many different ways we can look at that it's hard to really just knock it, wholesale. But, there's some scary stuff with AI. So I for fear of taking us down the wrong rabbit hole, I'll leave it at that. But, I have concerns about AI, but they're not necessarily how it's going to affect the art world, just because I think there's so much potential here to really push the limits of what we consider to be kind of the pinnacle of artistic expression currently. And I think that's going to evolve considerably using AI.
Magicraft, do you have anything to add to the discussion before we move on to individual questions?
Well, I'm just impressed by the amazing thoughts and theses brought out here by you guys. Listening and learning and well, AI is definitely it's going to improve a lot of things. It's gonna propel the industry forward. It's gonna bring in a lot of results, and it's first of all, it's going to be effective and results oriented. So a lot of possibilities will open up more and more as time goes on, and it's definitely it's going to be a huge boost for the gaming ecosystem in particular, just because that games could be as complex as the creator wants them to, and there's never an end to the complexity of a game. So AI can go as far as help with literally anything, anything. Looking forward to seeing just being literally in the space and watching it evolve as years go by. Seeing these not so like these small advancements and evolutionary steps and seeing the final product. Yeah, I'm glad to be a part of this history and to be here, guys. We're still early, and that's kind of it.
Well, maybe one day the AI will help us understand what the cat is saying in the background, and because it seems to have some strong opinions on the subject. So maybe one
Oh
day
my
we'll
God.
have
I
an
wish.
AI translation for
That'd be
pets.
revolutionary. I'll give all my money for that.
I was
I
actually
wanna
hoping
know
for a
what the
cat
cat's
emoji.
thinking.
It's a Bengal, so there's no end to his speed. Yeah, his voice is he's more talkative than I am sometimes. I need
One
that
day,
AI tool ASAP.
yeah, exactly. One day we'll see. Hopefully, one of us can crack the code on all that.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to individual questions here. So the first one is going to be to Carl. So 24 Comics has taken a very interesting approach to publishing comics that has straddled Web 2 and Web 3, and you've done these kind of like Kickstarter to NFT releases, which maybe you can explain. But why do you think this has been an effective release strategy, and what's your vision for how Web3 comic publishing will look in the future?
So thanks for that. As you guys know, we kicked off our company in a more traditional sense. We were, I work in film and TV, and we were really backing some of these creators in the comic book space to create original IP that we would adapt. But when we came across Web3, and a few of my partners are pretty knee deep into it, big on the coin side, I actually was more attracted to the component surrounding IP and NFTs and how it could be distributed, and leveraging Web3 to create traction. So we did, do a few launches, based on our IPs, from PFP collections to comic collections and whatnot. We were able to gain some traction, but one of the things we weren't able to gain was readership, which to me was it's foundational when it comes to storytelling. So we did an experiment by launching on Kickstarter one of our books, and we were able to get some significant traction in the traditional space. Also noticed that the traditional space was not in love with Web3 as a whole, and so we basically decided to just launch there first. But then watching what was out there already, we really started questioning ourselves as if, would it make sense to reinvent the wheel? And what that means is you look at Vivi, who has had a very powerful and successful partnership with the Marvels and DCs of the world. They've been putting out comics in a little bit more of a centralized perspective, but still Web3, built on Flow. And we decided to collaborate with them and release our books through them digitally. And for us, it's more about a phased approach. These days, I think when it comes to traditional publishing, it's kind of a shit show because they haven't really figured out how to get audiences to go purchase books. Rather, they really rely on the small mom and pop retailers to continue buying their books without guarantees that there is going to be any sell-through. For those of you who may not be as familiar with the comic book industry, for many years, back in the 90s and even 2000s, comic books were returnable, similar to a bookstore where, you go to Barnes and Noble. If things don't sell, Barnes and Noble can actually return it to the distributor so it could be redistributed somewhere else. Now, the reasoning that comic book companies used was that they couldn't redistribute comic books in the same way because conditions matter. And so what happened then was a lot of the comic book stores started closing because they weren't able to find sustainability in it all. But the ones that did stay open were these lovers of comics. They're not really businessmen because they're not really here to make money anymore. So you have a combination of collectors or individuals who maybe come from a more fortunate background, was able to keep these stores open really as hobby. And so what they became are like the VIP buyers for comic book publishers because they didn't care to return their books. They don't mind hoarding back issues. And so that's kind of the standard of what comic book companies, the industry has become. And so for me, though, it doesn't make sense because often these retailers would buy a bunch of books, hoard them, they don't sell, and your books just disappear into the back bin. It's great as a publisher, don't get me wrong. If you're just a publisher running a business, it's great. But to me, for the macro, industry, as a comic book industry, it doesn't help at all because you're creating less readers, you're putting the burden on these comic book shop owners, and you're not really helping grow the audience for the hobby. And so, where we are today is one, I think leveraging digital means to expand the audience. Two, leveraging Web3 to really gain additional traction for what we start on Kickstarter. And then eventually, when we feel like we're ready and we have enough of an audience, we would go to physical distribution, but not in the way you think where, we drop floppies every month in a comic book shop. I think that's a very dated model and no longer makes sense considering from issue 1 to 2, the droppage is typically anywhere in the 80 to 90 percentile. I feel like it only makes sense if we start hitting the big box retailers like the Barnes and Nobles and Amazons of the world. So that's pretty much the type of audience and traction we want to build before we start releasing physical copies. Now, obviously, conventions, I believe, have become the new comic book shops. And so you'll see 24/7's presence at Comic Cons, frequent. But we also see ourselves appearing at Web3 conferences in a different way, obviously like free claims and drops, because, as much as there's a lack of readership in the Web3 space, there are a lot of great, speculatorship. And I think a very powerful balance for a comic book industry is 80% reader, 20% speculators. But currently, I think in all these industries are about 80% speculators and 20% readers. So, we have a long way to go, and I think during markets like this is a really good time to curate our audience. And so that's really kind of a look behind the veil as to how we're strategizing between managing the two worlds.
Awesome. Love it. And thanks for sharing the kind of the journey that you guys have gone through. And huge congrats as well for finally selling out Evermind #1 on VB. Huge congratulations to you guys for that. That's a huge achievement, and excited to read the next issues as they get dropped on Kickstarter and on VB going forward. So very excited for you guys. So moving on to our next individual question here is to Chase. So Chase, what do you think are the biggest advantages for integrating Web3 technology into casual gaming?
Yeah, that's a really good question though, because right up my alley in terms of like how we're trying to get indie game developers to create games that are kind of like integrated with Web3. But one of the main advantages is that we have to remember that like how the dynamics of these games kind of look like in Web2 versus what it is now in Web3, right? Typically, in Web2, the highest ARPU or average revenue per user kind of games are the mid-core to the hardcore games. So these are the types of games where you have to spend an inordinate amount of time to level up and to play, right? So RPGs, MMORPGs. These are typically mid-core to hardcore games in general, and they make good money in Web2, for example. And that's exactly the opposite of what it is for casual games, especially in Web2. Right, so the barrier to entry for game developers to build a casual game is so much lower than building a big RPG game or MMO game just because you require a team, right? And so what happens is that like in the market, there's like a huge influx of casual games, but there's really not a lot of players that goes around to play all these games. So there's huge amount of games that are casual, but at the same time, there's also huge competition. And so a lot of the indie game devs in the Web2 space, for example, are also struggling a lot in terms of monetization, because the only pathway through monetization for casual games and hyper casual games are mostly through advertising. And I don't know about you guys, whether or not you like those ads when you play those games in your phones. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but a lot of people hate it, right? Surveys done by Unity in the past kind of like shows that developers think this is just like a necessary evil because there's no other way they can monetize their games other than showing advertising. And this is kind of like where Web3 could potentially come in, especially for these casual, hyper casual games, because of the fact that there is a new monetization model that we can put in place in order for us to be able to actually help out these game developers finally become, revenue positive, for some of these games, right? Because they're not they're not mid-core to hardcore, so which means that no one will invest time and money in buying like in-game currencies for these games. The only thing that they can actually do is to figure out a way as to how else they can monetize their games on top of advertising. And with Web3, there's multiple solutions that we can come up with, right? Them integrating Web3 in their games, they could potentially go ahead and run tournaments for, their single player game. A lot of this, casual, hyper casual games are mostly skills based, in the sense that you either have to beat the time or kind of like fastest, tapping finger, wins, or, like a platformer game kind of thing, which essentially, it's hard to make money off in Web2 unless you show ads, but in Web3, you can always turn it into something competitive. The only issue is that you want to make sure that you thrive and live in an ecosystem as opposed to flying solo, because it takes a lot of work to actually add some Web3 elements into it, right? And the way we kind of like look at games right now in Web3 is that there has to be some level of meta game on top of the current games that you have. So if you're like a big game, for example, you can always come up with a lot of stuff to be done by, regular players, by Web3 players in general. But if you're a Flappy Bird kind of game, it's just really difficult for you to be able to attract Web3 players, right? Even if you have something like a tournament, like a Web3 tournament with crypto as a buy-in or crypto as a payout, for example, it's just really difficult to fly solo. And that's one of the reasons why you kind of like need to thrive in an ecosystem where there's an aggregated player base that are Web3. And you are, as a game developer and as a game, is part of like a bigger meta game, kind of like a conglomerate of, small casual, hyper casual games. Think of it like as an ant colony, for example. Like, single ant would not survive the wild, but, as a colony, they do survive and thrive because of the fact that there's some level of, cooperation going on there. This isn't the case for like a huge beast of a game, right? Like a huge MMO that's funded like $30 million or something. But like for individual games, they gotta start working together, in order for them to actually take advantage of like what Web3 can offer. And we recognize that at the very least in OP Games. And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to apply this in Arcadia. We're trying to apply this in Spark, and in OP Guild, for example, because, flying solo, could be good for you as well. But like, I think that working together in terms of like trying to divert over a community of Web2 game developers into Web3, is a much better way of doing things, just because, as an indie, you're the developer, you're also the marketer, you're also the business development, you're also pretty much everything, right? And the last thing you need is another bandwidth to spend on R&D, specifically on which chain to build, on what wallet to use, on how to use Web3 in general. And so if you do have a collective of game developers and people that already are in the industry, to sort of like move you over into a huge paradigm shift, because like building on Web3 as a game developer is not just a shift in technology. It's also a shift in mindset. It's also a shift in terms of like how you make money in Web2 versus in Web3, because these are two completely different things to compare. And you kind of, need other people to help you transition into that culture, right? So it's not just a technology shift, but it's also a cultural shift. And that requires a lot of like help, a lot of like, resources within the community. And that's kind of like what we're doing with OP Guild, in general. But, just to go back to your question, there's a whole lot of advantage, to being, a game that is casual or hyper casual that is also associated with Web3, just because a lot of our indie friends who's building indie games in Web2, they're not getting anything at all. Like, we've done a survey last year through our affiliated game dev community called gamedev.js. We do have about 8,000 game developers in that community. And at least 72% of these game developers, indies, not studios, but indie game developers, earn $500 or below for a year for all of the games that they've created. And so, which means that they cannot really make this game development as a career. They really have like work for Facebook or Microsoft or, some other jobs while coding games over the weekends, right? Because at this point for them, anything Web3 related, is kind of like everything to gain and nothing to lose. Just because, they've been on the losing end anyway, on the Web2 side of things, at the very least financially, right? But, in terms of like how they build games, these are one of the most, talented, most idealistic bunch of game developers we have. Most of the stuff that we see in mainstream gaming are being experimented on first by independent game developers, when it comes to like how they build their games in general, because a lot of them are very forward thinking, because they're not really constrained with quote unquote the tyranny of being an enterprise. And that's kind of like one of the reasons why, like, if you think of, I don't know, like say for example, Box 2D. Box 2D is done by I forgot what her name is, but she created a physics engine that's open source that anybody can use, right? So as an indie developer, that's great help to a lot of people. But because it's open source, Angry Birds use that physics engine to kind of like create what Angry Birds is now, right? So they did not create the physics engine. It's an indie who did it. Other games are benefiting from it. And so it's not for the lack of innovation, but rather because there's a different world when it comes to game studios versus independent game developers. And I do think that any kind of movement forward that allows them to explore more stuff technologically, whether it's something Web2 related or Web3 related, is always a welcome change for them. And so the more we spread the word about like how Web3 can change the name of the game for these indies, the better it would be for them to kind of like appreciate the fact that there could be something good going on here. So yeah, that's kind of like my long-winded answer to this question so far.
Awesome. Appreciate the response. And as somebody building in the space, I generally don't have the time to go too deep into any of these hardcore mid-core games. So I'm very excited about the future of casual gaming in Web3, just because it's something I'll actually have time to do. So keep working at it, and yeah, we're excited to see what you guys continue to build. And then last question is to Magicraft, Alex here. So Magicraft is currently multi-platform and has a standard mode and a Web3 mode. In what ways do you think these and any other features you want to talk about make Web3 gaming more accessible for Web2 players?
Yeah, great question. It's a nice feature that we have that allows players to essentially get onboarded without too much of a hassle. So initially, the user starts playing our games without the need to download a wallet, to import any seed phrases and all of that tech savvy. Whatever Web3 thing they have to do, they don't do it. They just play the game, and then those additional features are opened up to them already in-app, in-game, which essentially take them by their hand and allow them to earn additional income with MCRT in all of our games. So yeah, that's a pretty cool feature that's essentially it was also built to help pass us launching on all the App Store and Google Plays and the Steams because they have just so many rules and regulations, and that was one of the reasons why and how we did it. And but also really helps out just with user acquisition to properly onboard users who are just have never touched the Web3 side of things ever before. But generally, our main core community is focused on Web3, of course, on because this is our main thing for now. But obviously, we are looking to expand and grow our user base to hopefully millions of users that people are able to play and earn income with MCRT token. That is a general big global goal that we are thriving to achieve, and doing our best to get to it. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate the response. And then I think we have time for probably one more question here for the group. And then this is going to be more of just a general question. And if anybody has anything that comes to the mind, I guess feel free to jump in. But what current trend in Web3 gaming do you find most surprising or unexpected, and why? Wondering if anybody has anything off the top of their head.
Yeah, I could chime in, honestly. An interesting trend is clickers. I'm not sure how many guys of you have heard of this trend on Telegram with the recent success of Notcoin. And there's a bunch of like new different apps. Like one of them is called Hamster Combat. So they launched their YouTube, and just in a span of 1 week they had a growth of 20 million or something users. So it just shows how many people are actually engaged. But the game is just so simple. All you have to do is just click the screen as many times as possible, and you just get those virtual tokens, coins, whatever. So that's the whole game, and you can kind of like advance your hamster or whatever, depending on the game itself. Now, but the essential thing is just to click. So yeah, that's what surprised me, is that Years back, I was coming into crypto thinking that I'm here for the innovation, you know. And then years pass by, and I'm looking at some of these games that are, I mean, some could call them AAA games because they're onboarding millions of people. And their simplicity is the cause of their success, and I mean, just looking at it is, I mean, from one hand, it's pretty cool seeing all this, yeah, a huge user acquisition, a lot of onboarding into the crypto space, and from the other hand, just looking at kind of, the decrease of innovation within the games on that kind of side. Like those, like those games are the ones that are getting the most attention, while real huge builders with like the funding teams and stuff are kind of in the shadow at the moment. But yeah, in my opinion, these clickers are just a fad, and they'll pass by as soon as people will realize that they're not going to be able to make much money on that. And yeah, but it's a cool trend, interesting dynamic currently in the market that I'm looking at.
And so
Yeah.
that's actually that's on the Ton blockchain, on like Telegram's blockchain?
Yeah.
Cool. I have not seen that.
Yeah, I guess actually, OP, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead first, and then I'll add a bit of like what Magicraft has said, which is like a fairly interesting thing.
Yeah, I guess I was just going to make the point that, having been in the space for a long time, these types of things maybe stop surprising me. We kind of seen, the movement around meme coins recently, and the dynamics there. And, I don't know, like to me, there's kind of a hybridization between casual gaming and meme coins that could work, right? Like this idea of a clicker sounds like the simplest form, but if there is a way of, for example, fair launching a coin and getting it into the hands of the people who are literally willing to sit there and click their screen, taking bots out of the picture. But if you could do that, maybe it's good. You want to create a loyal community and reward people who are excited about this thing. Go tell them to sit at a screen and click it for 10 hours and distribute a meme token that way, and then, build a community around that. I guess it's always interesting to me to see the virality around simple yet gamified solutions to maybe some of the problems. And, you look at, for example, some of the coins like runes and other things on the Bitcoin blockchain, mining those, you can't use kind of the traditional distribution methods that we're used to with launch pads and all those things in the same way. So, maybe there are ways of kind of gamifying, mining coins to create communities. I do think that we're kind of in an era where everybody's going to have a token, and that's kind of the trend. But the money that's associated with the tokens eventually will become a bit more reflective of what the project has actually built. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be I don't think meme coins are going to be the thing that persists for the next 3 years, just like I don't think gaming tokens around games that don't have substance and retention are going to be the thing that persists. I do think that tokens make a ton of sense in gaming ecosystems, and I think that the projects that really are building for the long term can incorporate tokens in a meaningful way. But yeah, I mean, you see some of these quick to market approaches, and I guess it's an interesting development in kind of the meme coin meta is kind of how I connect the dots in my head.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, like, because clickers in general, like even in like the Web 2 days, for example, has been known to be quite profitable, even without any financial incentive. And I think it's smart that they're kind of like repackaging that, because it's a low effort way of getting even non-players or even non-gamers to get involved in a game which doesn't have a lot of mechanics other than clicking, with the hopes of, earning something, right? Like at some point in the future, that could be worth something, right? That's kind of like the mentality that we have at the very least. But even like as an actual gaming enterprise, I do remember publishing a game back in 2014 or 2015. I'm not sure exactly. It's called Clicker Heroes. It's a web-based clicker game that we've published on both Steam and Android and iOS. And I do remember, at the very least for the life cycle of the game, which normally lasts about 12 to 18 months, earning quite a sizable amount of money on both advertising and kind of like power ups, just to sort of like participate in clicking at the very least on a daily basis. Normally players would go in, at least spend 5 minutes to 8 minutes of their time clicking away. And obviously there's like some level of progression in there. There's a way for them to be able to actually attract gamers into kind of like saying, oh, okay, there's some level of progress that needs to be had here. And, the more you click, the more monsters and bosses you kind of like, defeat along the way. You increase your power, output, in the sense that, there's bigger and bigger and bigger and meaner, better monsters to kind of like click and kill, sort of thing, right? And a lot of times, like, because it's a linear progression, some of these clicker games tend to kind of like put in like a rebirth mechanics around it, wherein you can always go and reborn yourself and go back to square one and sort of like level up again, but this time around with slightly more power and therefore more powerful kind of like opponents around it though, right? So it's psychologically there's merit in terms of like how game developers were able to actually fully gamify this and actually have people play it even without any rewards or incentives. And so like what the hamster game is doing is pretty smart. And also being in Telegram, if I'm not mistaken, helps it a lot, because Telegram has shit tons of users, and that's kind of like where you want to build if you want to kind of like gain that level of virality, and easy user acquisition. And so in a way, they've found a way to hijack people's psyche in Telegram and let them play a clicker game. And hopefully these people kind of like, oh, okay, like I'm earning something here, great. Affects that level of psychology. And so now you're seeing like 150 million players actually giving it a try. So that's I think impressive.
Awesome. So we are at the end of the space here. I know Carl has to drop. So Carl, real quick, if you have any final words, any closing thoughts, feel free to give them, and then we'll announce our giveaway winner and we'll close out the space and allow the rest of you to do the same.
Sure. Thanks, folks. Just want to say thanks, Spencer, Nick, for having me as always. Love you guys. Love this whole gaming space. And if anyone in the gaming community here is in need of IP, we have 10 original IPs that we have dove deep into. One thing I've learned is I think we're in the time where it's important to provide quality products, and I think we all can use some help when it comes to expanding on our strengths. And so often what we're finding is gaming companies coming to us to take a deeper dive into our IP so they could focus on the game mechanics and all that it takes to build a strong game. And so we're always open to that type of collaborative collaboration. So just ping me directly. Then second is we have a new Kickstarter campaign launching pretty soon. So if you just have a second, jump to your browser, search Zero Ghost Kickstarter, and there's a pre-launch page that could use a few follows, because we're only a few follows away from 300, and that will get us the algorithm where we'll get front page on launch at Kickstarter. And so that would be a huge favor. But otherwise, hope you guys all have a great day, and look forward to speaking soon. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, Carl. See you later. And then real quick, announcing our giveaway winner. So the winner this week of 5 Satoshi's Crystals is Underworld, or at Dogma Cats. Congratulations, Underworld. In order to claim your prize, if you haven't already, you just need to go to game.legions2029.com, create a free account, and then please send a DM to the Satoshiverse account here with your username, and we'll make sure to drop those crystals into your account. Nick, I will pass it back to you to close us out.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Spencer. Congratulations to Underworld on winning those crystals. Someone who shows up every week and is always in the chat. So congrats on being here and getting that win. So thank you to the panelists. I know that these are very busy times for all of us, and it's always appreciated when you can take an hour out of your busy schedules to come and join us on this space. I had a really great conversation today. This was very informative. We had a lot of different perspectives, and it always feels like an hour is too short. But to be mindful of everyone's time, we will wrap it up now. What I'll do is now I'm going to pass the mic. So if anyone wants to give any closing words, let us know about anything that's coming up like Carl did. Please feel free. Just one last reminder to please follow the Hideout account if you enjoyed the space, as we will be doing this content every single week. And if you haven't already tried Legions 2029, all the information is in the pinned tweet at the top. There's a ton of prizes, including USDC prizes for the current leaderboard that's going. So check out the pinned tweet that came. It's totally free to play, and it's something we've been working on for the last 2.5 years. So really excited to get your feedback. I will end my part now and then let you guys finish. There'll be about a 30-second delay where I'll keep the space open, so that because there's a delay between the speakers and the listeners. But yeah, let's open up the mic to either OP Games or Magicraft for any final words.
Yep. Thank you guys for inviting us. A great space, amazing speakers, interesting topics have been raised. So check out Magicraft, check out all our 3 games indeed. They're all free to play and play to earn. Follow us on our socials. We always have something juicy going on, either a giveaway, some campaign. Anyways, it's a way for our community to earn. Stay tuned for more updates, new games, lots of things are coming to our ecosystem. There's an upcoming token burn, maybe, and a lot of different things. Stay tuned, and looking forward to seeing you guys and talking to you guys soon.
Thank you, man. On my end, thank you so much, Satoshiverse, for inviting OP Games into this panel. Very insightful, and also learned a lot about you guys as well. So on my end, follow us in OP Games. Our other accounts are linked there. If you're a game developer, follow us in OP Guild. Join us in OP Guild. There's such a lot of things that we have in store for you guys to help you out in your journey to Web3. And then if you're a player, follow us in Arcadia. We do host tournaments every once in a while. A lot of those tournaments are either community-based or just free tournaments in general, with prizes and prize pools for some of the games that are there. So do check them out, support our developers, support anyone who's transitioning over from Web to Web3. I think the more we kind of like have our communities back, the better it is for everybody at some point in the future. So thank you so much for having me here.
All right. Thanks again to everybody who joined and everybody who joined in the crowd. I will be signing off in 30 seconds. So thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.